Welcome back.
Welcome back, family. I'm Renee,
I'm Curry.
and I want to say thank you to all of our longtime subscribers for tuning in to hear us out, and to the new listeners and new subscribers who are here. Thank you for finding us and hearing us out.
Thank you. And we took a few. Well, I think we took a week,
Yeah, it took a
like
week,
a few weeks off.
just a week. It was your
Yeah,
birthday week,
birthday week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got older and stuff like that,
hmm
so yeah,
And yeah, just I guess you could say enjoying some of the summer.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and now we're back
Yes, we're back. We're here.
to finish our discussion on victory,
Right.
redefining victory.
Mm-hmm.
And over the past few episodes, we've read some things, we've discussed some things,
Mm-hmm.
and in this episode, we really just want to put a period on the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
and really try to underpin the importance, if
Mm-hmm.
uh, underpin the importance of controlling
Mm-hmm.
the conversation
Right.
around these
Mm-hmm.
things, and we've a lot of the discussion that we've had has always been about you know trying to create a more create a more I guess you can say you know conducive tenor
Mm-hmm.
around how we discuss
Mm-hmm.
trying to fix the problems that we're facing
Mm-hmm.
off against, and really changing how a lot of us see these things,
Mm-hmm.
because it always comes back to the war thing and the
Mm-hmm.
victory, like we've discussed that nauseum, so we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to go over it.
Right.
But the big thing is that especially when we read the things they
Yeah.
carry,
Mm-hmm.
the excerpt from there is that war is, like you said, not metaphorical.
That's right.
It's not, it's
Right.
not like war.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like war
Mm-hmm.
is war.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the circumstances once you are in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing really like it.
Right.
You're nothing, really feeling that call and
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you're going to have to face,
Mm-hmm.
by doing it. And the decisions that one makes in those predicament is never a moral one. It's always a survival one.
That's right.
But the problems that we are facing are moral issues,
Right.
and it is oppression,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It is all these things, but it's not war,
Mm-hmm.
because war has a momentum, has a war is something else, and when you find yourself at that point, there really is no more room for discussion.
That's right.
Nothing else that needs to be said.
Right.
So the mere fact that we are discussing, that we are, talking about
Mm-hmm.
redefining and stuff like that, lets us know that no, it is not a war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when we read James Baldwin,
Mm-hmm.
it was about understanding, like I said, well, what is it that
Right.
we're facing?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that before when saying that we're facing this madness,
Mm-hmm.
we're facing this delusion, and what we read from James Baldwin,
Mm-hmm.
his letter that he wrote to his nephew, he pretty much lays it out,
Right.
like I said, better than we ever could. He
Good. Right.
talks about, how the world has been bent
Mm-hmm.
into shape by, you know, their particular
Mm-hmm.
views on what we are,
Right.
and how by our mere existence, by us not being what we are supposed to be in their worldview,
Mm-hmm.
we challenge their notions of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that causes a lot of dissonance,
Mm-hmm.
both within and without, for them and for us,
Mm-hmm.
because everything becomes about, like you said, challenging their notions.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes about changing their minds, you know. And we often say that we're not reacting, we're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to, we're not, trying to solve their issues. We're trying to solve our issues, you know. But that all comes from a place of control and understanding that, our issues and their issues are intrinsically connected, right? Solving our things and solving their things aren't mutually exclusive. But when we talk about how we go about it, how we go about trying to create our future, our infrastructure, our stuff, you know, it can't be about trying to correct the white man, right? Trying to correct, their delusion. That's not a battle that can be had. Right. That's not the thing that we can do. That's the thing that they can do.
That's right.
The only thing we can do is try to solve our situation as best as we possibly can. Not one that's going to bog us down in, like I said, in this dead end that doesn't get us anywhere. You know, that, a lot of the issues that they're facing, all the issues that we're facing, but just from a different, I guess, perspective, right? They have the perspective of the master, right? Who's this their paternalistic view of, forcing the world to be the way that they want it to be.
Right.
Right. And everybody else.
Right. And when the world doesn't respond
that way.
Well, we see the type of things.
The dissonance begins. And the madness begins. The madness,
Yes.
Right. Whereas we live, our entire lives have been at the consequence of their actions. We have always been the oppressed ones, the ones who are mastering us is like, mastering another resource on this planet, right? But we can't, and just like, I guess you could say, when a tornado comes, or when there's a flood, we constantly challenge the very physical being, the infrastructure of this country, of the world.
Right.
Because we are only meant to be so much. We aren't meant, to really be people, so we're not supposed to engage in the system the same way that they're supposed to engage in the system.
Right.
Right. But when we do, or when we show the capacity for it, it challenges those preconceived notions of what this world is supposed to be. And like I said, a lot of this is instinctual. A lot of this is, well, make no mistake that a lot of corruption happens from the top down. These things happen from the top down. If you want to know why something is broken, then look for, like we said before, look at the things that aren't there.
Right.
Right. And if you want to see why something continues to be broken, then look at who's profiting from the situation.
Right.
Right.
Look at those who benefit, and you see why the problems persist.
And then you see why the problems persist. So if you're trying to solve our problems, if you're trying to fix the world, right? Fix and correct these systems, correct us, right? You have to constantly look at who is this world meant to work for, right? For us, we often say, well, it's meant to work for white people. But white people are hooping and hollering and protesting and screaming and doing all this stuff, so evidently it's not working for them, right? Now, if you're looking from the white man's perspective, right, from the white person's perspective, you always hear about how there's a giant conspiracy to make the world work for us.
Right.
That, the affirmative action and all this stuff was all meant to shift the balance in favor of us. Right? But we're screaming, we're hooping and hollering, we're protesting because no.
Yeah, we know that. No. We know. No.
Yeah.
Right.
No, the world isn't. No. We don't feel like the world's on our side.
Right.
And evidently, neither do you.
But the thing is that you don't know where to, at least.
But we don't believe each other.
Right.
If the white man says that, well, my life is hard too, then for us, it's like,
well, that's your own making.
That doesn't matter.
Right. That's your own making.
It doesn't
this
matter.
This is your system. What would you be?
Like
not
you
working
said,
for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Like this is your system. This is your thing, right? But they're evidently it's not. According to what they say.
Right.
But they don't believe us when we say that the system ain't on our side either. Because they feel, like that, like it's unfair towards them. and looking for a reason, someone to blame, you blame the people you always blame.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the aesthetic of what the system is skewing towards, trying to push, diversity and all these things, and it seems like they're doing that at the cost of them,
Mm-hmm.
and that now they're on the underside, right? The situation is always more complicated, even for us and for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's never as lateral as we make it out to be. But the one thing that is true for both of us, that is a certainty for both groups,
Mm-hmm.
is that the system is not working. That
Mm-hmm.
we don't feel like it's on our side. That it's there to help us. That it's there to benefit us. That it's there to push us forward. That it has our best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
We keep saying it's not for us, it's for you. No, it's not for us, it's for you. But no one's getting served. So evidently, it's not for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who are actually profiting from this system are the ones
Going to space.
Are the ones going to space. Them.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently, the system was meant for them,
Mm-hmm.
because they're the only ones who who have the insurance of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Their future is insured. Their prosperity is
Mm-hmm.
insured.
Right.
Their money's insured.
Definitely. They pay zero taxes. They get,
Yeah, but
everything else.
the
Right.
system for us, nah, there's no assurances for us, right? But we're all looking at each other because we know where this comes from and we know how it propagates, right? Systemic racism is real,
Mm-hmm.
right? White people take that as a personal insult. We understand it as a reality,
Right.
right? You think we're trying to insult you. You know when we're trying to insult you, bro. All we're trying to tell you what the deal is,
Mm-hmm.
what racism cost us,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you're looking at wokeness and stuff like that and thinking that, well, that's your version of racism. No,
Right. We're not
your version
exaggerating.
of racism
Right.
is racism.
Right.
Your problem is racism.
Mm-hmm.
Your problem is the fact you don't want to deal with reality.
Right.
You don't want to deal with how the system is hurting you, how
Right.
racism hurts you. You would rather this woke, BS,
Right.
instead of actually dealing in your reality.
Mhm.
Because, as James Baldwin says, they're delusional.
Right. People crazy. Well,
You
that's
know,
what I say. Right. Delusional.
They're delusional.
Right.
They've been told
Mm-hmm.
that they are the better people,
Mm-hmm.
that they are the masters, that this world is meant for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're failing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they're failing. They're going hungry. They're going poor. The opioid crisis, suicide rates, all these things,
Mm-hmm.
And it's becoming clearer, or it's becoming harder to ignore
Mm-hmm.
the fact that no, this system isn't on your side.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sure as hell isn't meant
It's
for us.
Right.
So we have to take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
But as black people, we have to respond as black people.
Mm-hmm.
We have to respond from our, cultural genesis, from our views, from our perspective, from our struggles, So that's why it is imperative that we define what our struggle is
Mm-hmm.
correctly, that we define, our parameters, what it means to be black. All of these issues, they are imperative to understanding how we go about solving our issues.
Mm-hmm.
The same way they need to have this conversation
Mm-hmm.
with themselves, right? But it's hard for one to look at yourself when you're living in a society with so much, with so much going on, right? You got bills to pay, you got mouths to feed. You really can't afford to be very introspective. You can't slow down and really ask yourself these questions. Well, that's why, but that's the thing that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point, is for society to keep you busy, too busy, to actually do anything constructive. So that's why we often say you got to walk away, you got to take a step back. You have to do these things to build up your infrastructure from your point of view. Do it from what you need, from what you have, And same thing with them, right? We need to, like I said, this isn't black and white. It's those who know and those who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Build from what you know. Build like you know. You
Yeah,
know,
try that on for size.
act like you know, do
Right.
these. We've talked about that over and
Uh-huh.
over. But but when you're saying that, oh no, this is a war and we need to beat them and all that stuff, you're siphoning energy away from from us actually doing anything actually constructive,
Right.
from
Because what
truly
happens is that
building a future for
right,
ourselves.
because what happens is that you get caught up in that aesthetic of
Hmm.
what, you know, we are supposed to do because, war takes on a particular connotation. And then when it's not happening, then we, like you say,
That's
it's
it.
like it takes away your energy. You feel like a failure. You feel like you're not doing,
Yeah.
doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, and that's not
Hmm.
necessarily the case. It's just that now, we need to take a step back. I like to use the word retreat, but maybe that just sounds, too harsh
Hmm.
or whatever. But I like to, just take a step back for a moment and just, regroup, redefine, and then come back out, better than what we were, before. And so when looking at these problems, you know, we know that when we talk about oppression, you know, we're not just talking simply about like black oppression,
Hmm.
because first of all,
We mean oppression with a capital O.
yes, and it's global anyway. We are a
Hmm.
global people. So,
Yeah.
you know, when we talk about ending those things and how you go about ending oppression,
Hmm.
you know, that takes on a more it almost requires you to take a step back.
Yeah. And understand you
Hmm.
can end oppression, capital O, as a black person.
Right.
You don't need to surrender your cultural identity
Hmm.
to try to take on this giant, this big thing.
Right.
No, you need your cultural
Yes.
identity to understand what
Stand the
oppression
person
is to
is.
you.
You're right.
If you understand what it is to you,
You
then you can relate and
same
understand
as
what it is for everyone
everyone else.
else. Move in your knowledge. Know what you know. Act
Right.
like you know it, like you said.
Right. Right.
You know. But a lot like like I said with the war, all of that siphons energy away.
Hmm.
And then nothing gets done.
Right.
Then we were sitting here waiting,
Hmm.
standing waiting,
Hmm.
looking for repeats, looking for another Martin, a
Right.
Malcolm, or instead of recognizing what is here
Right.
and seeing what we can do at this moment.
Right.
We're trying to, like you said, myth build.
Right.
We're mythologizing.
Right.
We're
Yeah, you
aggrandizing.
are here to do
You know,
your work.
real practical
Right.
action.
Right. Hmm.
And those things aren't glorious. They're not meant to be glorious.
Hmm.
I've often said that that the one of the I wish that a president would just be like I'm not honored to do this job.
Hmm.
I'm not here for honor or glory or to make a stamp on history. I'm here to do a job.
Right.
This is about honor.
Hmm.
I just want to do a good job.
Hmm.
I want to do a job.
Hmm.
Period. Because that's like I said. Your politicians, all these public servants, you're not there for glory. You're
Hmm.
custodians. You're maintenance men.
Right.
You maintain. You fix. You solve. And you keep going.
Hmm.
There's no glory, no honor. Just do your job.
Hmm.
But you self-aggrandize and you do all these things, and you enter that world, right? That you say that is full service, but what are you serving then? You're serving the ideal and not the people.
Right.
And you get so caught up in that, and like nothing gets done. How many presidents? How long are we going to be like, man? What is going to happen?
Yep.
What's
Right.
we need some action. We need
Right.
something to change.
Right. What are we waiting on?
You know,
Right.
every president, every last one of them, you know, has failed to actually do something
Hmm.
to stop people from being like, man, there's something wrong with this. I'm first like a majority of our presidents or presidents of a a state of free people and slaves. So it's impossible for them to live up to that standard.
Right.
And even after that, they still kept pushing the bar, still
Yep.
kept pushing the bar, never actually answering the call, never
Hmm.
actually doing what needs to be done for anyone,
Hmm.
you know? And none of them it's never happened. It's never happened because of the way, just even the way you describe your job, describe the things you're supposed to do,
Hmm.
takes you further away from what it's actually supposed to be,
Hmm.
and we can't afford that. right? Because they're failing to. If they lived up to their side of the bargain, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It wouldn't be all this. But you're failing to do your job, which means we have to do it ourselves, right? You don't. I guess it's too much like right, like we've said before.
Yeah.
It's too much like right. So we need to create and build from our own, for our own.
And it has to be our choice,
Yeah.
our own decision, our own making versus, what has been put, before us so many times. We have the Greenwoods and the Rosewoods and the North Carolinas and, the Atlantas, whatever, the Black Wall Streets and all of, we had all of those things because we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And now, if we want those great schools, the infrastructure, the family building, the community, we have to want that because
we have to choose it.
Yeah, we have to choose it.
Not because it's our only choice.
And so that's where we are now. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to, recognize it, and we have to accept the responsibility for it. And so much of what has happened, because I keep seeing the question, keep hearing the question about, was integration the worst thing that ever happened to us? And I'm like, you can't stop with that. So here we are now.
No.
In the 21st century.
Right,
here we are.
Yeah, to answer that, was integration
no. Well,
it wasn't the worst thing.
You understand? So here we are now.
The worst thing for us is that we allowed integration to take us away from what we know.
Right.
Because we didn't have a choice.
That's right.
Integration didn't mean you didn't have to stop, funding our own organizations. But as soon as we got the opportunity, everything fell apart.
Right.
Because we didn't choose it.
Right.
Like I said, those institutions arose because we didn't have a choice.
Right.
Black people have never chosen black people.
Right. We never chose this. We were never even given, look, we don't even have to go through it. We are here now, and we can make.
And we have a choice now.
Yeah, we have a choice now.
And how we go about building our future. On how we go about trying to correct these issues.
Right. What I've said for decades pretty much is that you want better schools, take your children out of them. You want better communities. Whatever it is that you want, remove yourself from it. Make the choice to do that. And then take it from there. But we insist on putting ourselves in these precarious situations, thinking that our presence there is just going to make it better. And we know that has not, been the case.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
And we talked about in truly trying to identify what it is and how we go about solving our issues, and what even solving our issues mean. We touched on it before of the progress and justice. That in a perfect world you'll be able to get both progress and justice. But in a world that gives you neither,
right?
In those cases, as a people, we have to choose what it is that we want, right? And I've talked about before that I think that progress is justice. That we get justice through progress. That progress is the point, But for a lot of people, that's not.
Right.
It's not the case.
It's not the case, right?
We want justice. Right? And for them, justice is progress.
That's right.
Right? And we just to touch on it once again, about the reparations. Right? I think that's the big point, because that was the biggest tiff that we had, was our disagreement on that. Right? And talking about victory and what a victory really is. Right? Like I've said before, that reparations isn't, what we need. That reparations it's not a victory. It's not what we need. It's not right. All these things. that, you know.
And then of course we went back and forth because my thing and how I'm defining, need,
Mm-hmm.
is different from I think how that you defined it, and I want to try to get to that quickly. And I'm gonna say this
Mm-hmm.
is that we know recently that the Japanese, received, reparations.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the Jews have received, reparations, and we also know that that the Japanese and Asian people in particular, they are still an oppressed group.
Mm-hmm.
They may not. I mean, they are still an oppressed group.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews have received reparations, and they are still an oppressed group as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about, do we want to end oppression? Okay, or do we think that we're going to always have an oppressed people?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that we're going to always have? And so, in receiving reparations, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, are we still going to be an oppressed people?
Mm.
If you are to look at the groups of people who have received reparations over the last 100 years,
Mm.
If that's an indication of anything, then the answer is
Mm-hmm.
yes, right? So if we want to end oppression,
Mm.
then we have to look at reparations differently. As you say,
Mm-hmm.
not in the colloquial type of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, way that we have, looked at it for so long. And so I was actually thinking about this after the numerous conversations
Mm-hmm.
that, we always have. And so I am one on the other end of the justice is the progress.
Mm-hmm.
I lean, more towards that. And but I can understand,
Mm-hmm.
where you're coming from in regards to, the progress.
Mm-hmm.
So if the progress is to get rid of oppression, right?
Mm.
Is That's the progress.
That's the end.
That's Yeah.
That's what we want.
That's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Then the reparations that we need, I would say, and that's the the end of oppression, the end of racism, the end of those things of racism, of environmental racism, all of that stuff that comes through the work and the progress, right?
Mm.
And so that will give us, you know, the reparations that will go further for the repairing
Yeah.
of a people
It's like I said,
more than anything
like I
else.
said before, I think that would preclude the need
Hmm.
for reparations.
Hmm. But I always say, if you, it's not. But I don't want to make it seem
Mm.
as if, you know, we have to, you know, act a certain way, be a certain way, do a certain thing
Mm.
in order to get that, And so the whole mindset,
What
because
do you mean by
because because I was because for me, it's about, like I mentioned, about atonement and doing what's right.
mm.
And I'm like, if it's been stated by us that this is a part of the atonement and the right thing, you know,
Mm.
then I have a hard time,
Mm.
adjusting to how that's not a part of it.
Mm.
And so I still, like I said, and no, it's not that so much that we disagreed. It was just that our perspectives on the route to take it. For you, it's like we could just boom, just do it and just get there. And I'm more of a, I think it's going to require, more
Mm.
more steps.
Well,
You know.
but like I said,
Mm-hmm.
the end of oppression is the end.
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing we want to get to.
Right. So
Ending
my,
oppression isn't a plan.
I agree. Yes,
You
yes, yes,
know,
right. So,
that's not the
so my,
progress. The
so,
progress, as far as I'm concerned, is step one, getting us right,
mm-hmm,
right? Getting us right. Like I said, working from our knowledge,
mm-hmm,
defining what it means to be black,
mm-hmm,
right? Defining that,
mm-hmm,
defining what it means to be a human being,
mm-hmm.
understanding these things, you know, understanding how we relate to each other, on what a society is supposed to be.
We have to
Just
confidently
get on the
believe
get on the
that we could
consensus.
change things. Because I think, because I mentioned this yesterday about, is that, excuse me, we have to have the confidence that oppression can end. And I
Mhm.
think for so long, obviously for my life and for, the men that lives before, and even as currently constructed today, is that we have a hard time wrapping our ideas and our mind around the total end of oppression.
I I don't know about that.
I don't know, because it just feels.
I think that we often define oppression as our oppression,
Hmm.
right? We don't really see it beyond ourselves, you know? So for us, we can definitely see an end to our oppression,
Hmm.
right? But that's why, you know, the war ideals and stuff like that
Hmm.
are so pervasive,
Hmm.
right? Are so attractive because we definitely can see an end to our oppression. We can see an end to that,
Hmm.
right? But what I'm saying is that ending our oppression doesn't end oppression,
Hmm.
right? And that we need to be careful to not, end up propagating those things that we say we're trying to, you know, end, trying
Hmm.
to destroy. So, because like I said, war does not solve issues.
Hmm.
They propagate
Right.
issues. They create more. It creates more
More. Hmm.
madness, more delusion.
Hmm.
It forces other people to make that same decision to to take that boat ride in Canada,
Hmm.
and have to face off against this existential crisis. Right? That's what it does. It doesn't solve anything. It breaks people.
Hmm.
And it breaks them
Hmm.
physically and mentally, right? So that's not the route that we ought to be taking. Mainly
So,
because like I said, it propagates more than it actually
all
solves.
right.
But
So,
like I said, we have a hard time seeing beyond
all right.
ourselves,
So is
seeing the forest through the
reparations?
trees.
Because I contend that, that reparations, even though I know that it stems from the the unpaid labor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we've talked about this many times, is that if we say that slavery is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? That means that, you know, no people should benefit from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that is and I think that's pretty much the stance that many of us have
Yeah.
taken. All right, so if no one should benefit
Mm-hmm.
from this crime,
Yeah.
okay, then no one should benefit from it. How is it that we still see today, you know, the quote unquote benefits
Mm-hmm.
that slavery, you know, has put this country in? You know, we keep it's we deal with we deal with the impact from, slavery, Jim Crow,
Mm-hmm.
Reconstruction, Jim Crow, war on drugs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's been that line, you know, and for another group, well, we know what that line has been as well. So if no one, should quote unquote benefit from this, you know, how is it that we can curtail and literally put a stop to this country benefiting from it.
How is it that we stop America from benefiting from slavery?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, in slavery,
For real, right? So you end it, but you still have it in your, in your 13th Amendment.
you have it for
Okay,
prisoners.
yeah, but we know what that means.
Yeah,
Jaywalking, whatever it is, could get you
to
put.
get you in prison.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
so there.
Hmm.
Then you still have all of you know, the monetary positioning that this country has. You know, is directly related to, the enslavement of a people.
Hmm.
You understand me? So how is it that we can change that? Just like how? How do we go about, getting this country to move away from, its blood money?
What?
But
They're not like so they're not.
because now I'm not talking about us getting anything.
Hmm.
Because we've had that discussion already.
Hmm.
Now I'm talking about how how is it that we can move the country, move people to not continuously benefit from the theft of
That's
our labor.
uh, like, that's pretty much just another way of asking how to end racism.
Okay.
So everything we've talked about,
Okay.
how do we get this? How to that's basically just asking how do we end racism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm only posing this
Yeah, but that's what I said. But
for
if you want
yeah,
the answer,
yeah, that's
yeah, that's
right. That's
everything.
what it is,
Yeah,
right? So I'm only
everything
posing
we've
this.
talked
I'm
about.
only posing this particularly for our listeners, because I already knew what, pretty much. Well, yeah, you end that apparatus, you end racism,
Yeah,
right?
but the thing is that a lot of the things that we think end don't end the racism,
Right,
don't end the oppression,
right.
and reparations, I would say, is one of those things.
Yeah, that's why I framed the question the
Yeah,
way
but
that
yeah,
the way that I did.
yeah,
That's
but and I'm just
right,
saying,
right, hmm
it doesn't end things.
right.
It doesn't, you know, that's the whole reason why we want to redefine victory, because
hmm
how we think about victory and winning and fixing our issues don't actually fix the issues,
hmm
don't actually change anything,
hmm
right? We have to, like I said, have to be accurate.
Right.
We have
So
to be,
so now we have to. What I'm saying is that now we have to ask ourselves: do we want to simply position ourselves better in this? Because we know, all right, let's take a quote unquote lump check,
mhm,
right? We know automatically that would change, you know, your, I'm gonna say, economic situation.
mhm.
That would change your position in this, but it wouldn't change anything for
It wouldn't
you.
change the system.
It wouldn't change the system. So we have to ask ourselves, right? Do we want to simply change our position in
Justice
this,
or progress.
right? Or do we want to eradicate and get rid of the system
Yeah.
altogether?
Like we talked about, like
So,
solving the world for the slaves, solving the world for the kings, stuff
right,
like that.
right. And so that's why, I didn't, get into all of the other stuff that we have talked about, just yesterday on it,
Hmm.
because I felt like that was the probing thing,
The big
you
thing
know.
is that a lot of discussion around reparations and not getting reparations always make it out to be like, if you say, you don't want reparations, it often comes from black people scapegoating white people
Uh-huh.
and all that stuff, and we're complaining and all that good stuff,
Mhm.
and that's not what I'm saying,
Right.
right?
Right.
And saying that you want reparations isn't. doesn't directly mean that, you know, you don't want,
Right, right,
progress.
right, right.
It's not that lateral.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
is that we as a people have shown that we don't need
Mm-hmm.
reparations. That all that infrastructure that we want, we have had before.
Mm-hmm.
We've had it in spite of
Mm-hmm.
all of the things, in spite of, systemic racism, in spite of not being paid the debt that we are owed.
Mm-hmm.
We've shown that we don't need it, right? And I think for us that constantly, trying to get them to pay up on a debt, pay up on this, it takes on that element. It takes on the element of scapegoating and all this stuff, and it's easier if it falls into those trappings,
Mm-hmm.
and it moves away from the point.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is this necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what we need? Is this going to fix anything? Right? We get big down on the bogged down in, asking the moral issues
Mm-hmm.
of morally, is it right for us to ask this? What white people today aren't the same people, they didn't have, so why is it fair for us that's detracting away from
Right.
the actual point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing that you talk about when you're not trying to talk about anything,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not actually trying to make a point.
Mm-hmm.
The point is will this solve anything?
Mm-hmm.
Will reparations solve anything?
Mm-hmm.
And
Would it solve oppression?
would it solve
Yeah,
oppression?
because that's the
Right.
thing. That's
So
the thing.
and the answer is it depends on how you use it.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
It depends on how you use
That's
it.
right.
But guess what? That's the same answer to what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Will what we have now be able to solve oppression?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can, depending on how
How
we
we
use
use
it.
it. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying is that
Right.
we don't need reparations.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to wait for their atonement and or their checks. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever, however you paint reparations to be,
Right.
we don't need that.
Right. We could do this.
We already have everything
Everything.
that we need.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to do is choose it,
Mm-hmm.
choose to be it, choose to be about it, and then act on it. That's
Mm-hmm.
all. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you get so bogged down, like it's in that conversation, in trying to get that we end up with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get any progress or justice.
Mm-hmm.
We get nothing.
And still no
You get,
reparations. Right.
yeah, you get nothing. You get, symbolic gestures,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Murals and
and all that
painted
stuff,
streets. And,
right? And as far as I'm concerned, reparations is just another symbolic gesture.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't fix anything.
Right.
It doesn't
So
solve anything.
the thing is that if we want to end oppression,
Mm-hmm.
then that is the thing that we
need to be about.
Need to be about.
And
if your thought, if the thought is that reparations will not end oppression,
Mm.
right? If that's the thought, well, reparations will not end oppression. Okay, then what are we doing this for? Why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And
Depends, like you said, what do you want?
right, what do you want? And so that's pretty much, my stance, and it harpens on some of the ideas, even by Amos Wilson. I remember one thing that he mentioned is that reparations is not our goal. That's not. Yes, if you want it, that's fine. But that's not the goal. The thing is to end this madness, to end oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And if we be about doing those things, then the things that you think that you will get from reparations, because we're thinking that it's going to.
It's the same thing that we
You know.
thought about when we got the right to vote,
Right.
or when segregation ended.
That the hearts and minds of folks will
that
change.
that this
right.
is the thing that we need.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That if we had, our voices recognized in that way, if we
Mm-hmm.
got opportunities to go to these schools, to, partake in these businesses, if it wasn't, Jim Crow and all this stuff, if it wasn't this and that, if it wasn't all this stuff, we would be able, you know, to get everything that we're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I'm not going to say what racism is over, that, Jim Crow's gone, that oppression is gone.
Yeah, because we know that's
We
not
know
the case.
that's not the case,
Right.
right? These things just evolved.
Right.
They rebranded
Right.
themselves. They got a bit subtler.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have the right to vote,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Even if they are lining up in ways
Well,
to suppress
we
it.
know, that, but that's a fairly recent occurrence,
Uh-huh.
right? But all I'm saying is that you have the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
You can shop in any business you want to shop at.
Mm-hmm.
You have these choices,
Mm-hmm.
and here we are.
Right.
When I'm saying that you get bogged down in these things,
Mm-hmm.
is that it took a very long time for us to be able to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
to go to their schools.
Right.
If that's how you want to paint it. Took us a very long time to get the right to vote, and it took us even longer to have that right respected. And after all of that,
Mm-hmm.
we still find ourselves
Right.
right back
Yep.
here.
Right.
Over and over and over again, we devote ourselves to something that doesn't fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are looking for we need, we're looking to them. We're trying to change the system by going to them, by protesting and doing all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Right.
The only thing that has ever shown any success for us is when we do for ourselves, then they come.
Right.
Oh, then you get all the things you're looking for. Then,
right. Right. Keep saying right.
Yep. How many times do I talk about the
right.
Montgomery bus boycotts
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff? Once we show the capacity to exist without, they begin to understand how much they need for us to take part in the system. That's the thing. That's why, capitalism is global. Because it cannot exist with anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Anything outside of that system takes away from that system. It slowly begins to kill it.
Yep.
So that's why it needs to be everywhere to survive. Everyone needs to be duped into playing this game.
That's right.
Because the moment someone falls outside of it,
mm-hmm. we already know.
The dominoes begin to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the position of the president, is maintaining that power. All the concessions that the government makes to its people sacrifices a bit of its power. The government wants to maintain its power.
Mm-hmm.
So you can protest and get angry and all you want. The government is going to say, how can we stop the protest while maintaining our power?
That's it.
That's their goal.
Right.
Every single time is to maintain its position first and foremost. So if we want them to do something that will inherently challenge their position, that will take away from their power, then we need to show that we can exist without it.
Mm-hmm. And
that we can exist outside of that measure.
The listeners, new and old, especially those who've been around, and I get the messages from,
Mm-hmm.
You've heard this already. You know this is just a thing of just catching up to it. You know this. Some of our, you have said that yourself
mm-hmm.
many times. We've said that already. It's just that looking at it in this particular
how do you wean the government off of that blood money?
Right.
Well, it has the money, and it sees no real reason to not use it.
That's right.
To not keep trying to get.
That's right. Right.
How do you stop it? Why would they stop?
Right.
Why would they?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'll tell you how they'll stop. When they stop making money.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
When they can no longer make money that way, that's when real change happens.
Mm-hmm. And we have the capacity to do that.
We have the capacity to shut off that tap.
Mm-hmm.
To make it impossible to profit that way, this way anymore.
Right.
To make it impossible for the world to profit off of oppression. To profit from our suffering. To profit from pain. We can make that choice. We can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what we want to do.
Right.
But a lot of our answers don't actually do that.
Right. We think that it does,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, we think that it does, or we think that it will.
We think that it will. Right.
And so we get caught up in that, and we don't, like I said, we don't take a step back. We talk about all of the different groups again. We talk
Mm-hmm.
we talk at nauseam about all the different groups who have received reparations, and
Mm-hmm.
and here they are, you know,
Still protesting.
still protesting, still oppressed, right?
That's what we
Pick a
said.
people, and here they are. And
We
so,
need to make
right.
it like I've said many times before
Mhm.
with the inoculation.
Right.
You can't just kill the snake. It's the poison that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Mhm.
The snake's a part of the world.
Right.
It's the poison, that's the venom that's going to kill you.
Mhm.
So you need to create a way for the poison to not affect you.
Right.
And you can create that world.
Right.
And for the snake to exist in that world, it's going to have to lose its poison.
Mhm.
Then you solve the problem.
Right.
All of a sudden, you solve the problem.
Right.
All of a sudden, evolution has happened,
Right.
and now the nature of snakes has been changed.
That's right.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Cultural genesis.
Mhm. Yeah.
All these things.
We have it.
we need to act like we know
No, right.
who we are.
Right. We know we have the
outside
capacity to do it.
Outside of the
Right.
paradigm of the struggle, outside of the paradigm of the white man, who are we?
Mhm.
What do we want? What are we trying to do?
Mhm.
What are we trying to be?
Right.
Once you begin to answer those questions, outside of, like I said, outside of that, then you put yourself in the situation and see how you move with everything else.
Mhm.
Because isolation is the answer. You can't isolate yourself from the world. That you do that. This is where isolation gets you.
Yeah.
It gets you into a cultural
Right.
dead end.
Right.
There's this feedback loop of nonsense
Mhm.
that keeps you stuck
Yeah.
and causes eventual extinction.
Right. We know what that isolation has caused. We know what that isolation is, in particular with, again, we can always see it with
Mm-hmm.
with another people. We talk about like critical race theory, right? Which is nothing but history, but
Yeah.
that's right. We see what happens to them when they deny, or they don't want to be taught that history. We see how they respond. they run up they run up in DC.
Mm-hmm.
They're crying. They're doing all kinds because they have because they are
lying.
because they're lying. And we see that in them, but we don't.
But it's harder to recognize in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know for a fact we're under the book.
Right.
It's hard to buy that they're under the book.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds like they're lying.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
All right.
Because we know what it means to us,
Mm-hmm.
and we know what our oppression does for you.
Right.
So it's hard, like I said, the police officer's oppressed, but you're still the one with the gun.
Mm-hmm.
My oppression is getting shot.
Right.
Your oppression is feeling the pressure to pull the trigger.
Right.
Right?
That's not how this goes. Right.
And for us, we don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But like James Baldwin says, love them. That's how this is going to get fixed.
Not love in the sense of, of ignoring or
you're not
denial,
ignoring.
or
you're facing what it
Right.
is. You're facing who they are, and you're making it impossible
Right.
for that person to exist.
Look, to do the kind of work that we say has to be done anyway, you have to do it out of love anyway. You have to love yourself. You have to love your people. You have to love
At least something.
in order to do this work anyway. You know this already because if you don't, you fall frustrated. You feel defeated. And that's when the hatred, takes over, and the bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
Those type of things take over. So if you love your people,
love something.
Love something.
Love something enough.
Right.
You don't have to love not your people. If not us, not them, then love the future.
Mm-hmm.
Love what you could be. Love what we could be.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that humanity, these things are not optional. It's not optional.
Mm-hmm.
Like we often treat like love and respect as if there's some commodity.
Right.
When they are as indispensable to being able to understanding our world as sight and hearing.
Mm-hmm. And it's not in spite of.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So you look if 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 me saying that you have to create a world out of love and you have to fix this out of love sounds,
Soft.
frilly and
Yeah,
soft,
soft.
then you have a lot of personal things you need to do.
Right, because we're not even talking from that age. We're not
No,
now.
mainly because that's the answer. It's
Right.
always been
The
the
answer.
answer.
Right.
How long and how what other movie and or song and or quote and or book that you
Right.
need to read to get you to understand this one thing that we've known since the dawn of time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That if we help each other, it helps us. If we cooperate with each other, it helps us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cooperation comes from a place of sense of respect
Respect
and
and
love
love.
for one another.
Right.
We know this.
Right. We talk.
And yet
We talk about cooperation all the time. We even have, what
yeah,
other
unity,
cooperation, unity.
brotherhood, all these
Yeah, we
things.
know. We
We know
know
about
this.
that.
Right.
But like you said, you're trying to pick your steps. No.
Right.
Every step, everything that we do has to be tinged with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that just doesn't sound right.
Mm-hmm.
That's because you have not come to grips with it is that you're dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
that we're dealing with.
Right.
Simple as that.
Right. You know those Kwanzaa principles that we like to celebrate in December.
Hmm.
It's all the same. It's the you know cooperation, self reliance, and unity, faith. Those
All
things.
that stuff.
All it's
That's what it says.
that's
That's what it is. That's
that's
what
what we're
it's
talking
always
about.
been.
Right.
That's
That's
what
what we're talking about.
that's what we need.
Right.
Go from there.
Right.
You know,
Those
so
principles.
so yeah, in
Mm-hmm.
conclusion, our victory is not winning a war because it's not a war. We are dealing with delusional. We're dealing with madness. Our victory,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, is being able to end this madness. The madness that divides us, that puts people ahead of each other, that says that you can only exist at the cost of everything else. Right? That madness, that thing that says that we have to go through you.
Mm-hmm.
We have to rule you. We have to conquer you. Somebody has to be on top. Somebody has to be on at the bottom. Profit. All these things that serve to regiment and segment our understanding of ourselves and everything else. These things will not solve our problems. If we say that we need unity, we need brotherhood, we need these things, then we need to unify. We need to act like we are brothers, that we are family. We need to give each other that room, that space, and that understanding. We need to temper our understanding of self and of brotherhood with the understanding that we are brothers and that this world is going to take all of us. Just like I said, just
Mm-hmm.
assume that we all belong here. Assume that every human being on this planet belongs on this planet with every face, every nationality, every belief. Go from there. Try to create a world from that. And you'll begin to see how everything begins to change. All of the things, all of those beliefs that said, that you need to defeat your enemy, that that person is that we need to beat them. See, you're not assuming that that person needs to be here, right? And we're not saying like that you can't recognize those bad elements of
Mm-hmm.
reality or
Mm-hmm.
the toxic elements in humanity.
Right.
Yeah, you need to recognize
Of
those things,
course. Of course.
right? And you need to face those
Mm-hmm.
things. But facing those things and solving those things requires a different answer because of killing and butchering and war and
Genocide and those
genocides
things.
and all
Right.
those things. Those things propagate,
Mm-hmm.
and you may think that's not what you're talking about, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about war and talk about anything else.
Right.
They are intrinsically connected. You can't be a king and not a conqueror. Conquerors conquer.
Right.
And the conquered people don't like to be conquered, whether you do it with or without blood.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to choose. We have to choose how are we going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want? Right? redefine, redefine victory, redefine reparations, redefine, all of these things that we say that we need.
Mm-hmm.
Because in truth, we already have them. Now we just have to put them into practice.
Right.
We have to be about it.
Right. And we have to make that choice to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments, and thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you.